Welcome to Mo Health Media. My name is Guy Danhoff, and today we have a very special broadcast for you as we are actually going to go a little deeper on a topic that's obviously something that a lot of young people experience, and that is the topic of eating disorders. And we're going to unpack with a very special panel that I'm going to bring in now, and we'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And first of all, ladies, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you doing, Guy?
I'm doing great. I'm glad that you are all here. I'm really looking forward to the panel format. This is one of the very few times we have actually done this right here in Missouri Healthy Media or Healthy Schools. And what I'd like to do is, Anna, we'll start with you. If you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Thanks, Guy, so much. And I'm so happy to have all of you here today. This is quite a topic to be discussing. My name is Anna Forcelledo. I am MOSHAPE President-Elect currently. I also teach middle school health and physical education. I've been teaching for about 15 years now. And pertaining to this topic of eating disorders, I myself am a recovering with eating disorders. I recovered from anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating disorders for multiple years. It started in high school for me and carried on for many years. And it's something that has really shaped my life of who I am, because it's healing from those things and healing from and recovering from an eating disorder. You have to restructure, you have to reshape how you look at yourself and the relationship you have with yourself. And so that's really been really powerful throughout the years. It's taken many years to be how I feel now, but it's really exciting to know that this type of stuff is being talked about today. And I'm really proud of the fact that I can be here sitting in this conversation and having it with my past and being able to share it. So thanks, Guy.
Well, thank you, Anna. And now I'd like to bring into our next panelist, and that's going to be Veronica Delgado. Veronica, welcome, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's really lovely to get to sit on this panel with everybody. So my name is Veronica. I'm actually a therapist. I work at an eating disorder treatment center. So I am working with people who are coming into treatment to get help with their eating disorder. I've been doing that for about 5 years. And yeah, that's kind of my orientation to the topic.
Excellent. And I'm really glad that you'll give us that kind of perspective. And then last but not least with our panelists is going to be Denise Wilfley. And Denise, how are you? And tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, doing well. And I am the Scott Rudolph University professor at Washington University in St. Louis. And my background, I'm a licensed psychologist and very passionate about the issue of eating disorders, and in particular, making sure that we help individuals who struggle with eating disorders to be able to recognize the symptoms and really to try to help make sure to support them in getting the services they need.
All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive right into our first question. I'll put it right here on the board for everyone. And Denise, we'll just go right back to you. What role do you play in helping people manage eating disorders?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. So for the last 30 years, actually, I've been funded by the National Institutes of Health. And what I've been looking at is what causes eating disorders, how do you prevent eating disorders, and how do you best treat eating disorders? And so we have effective treatments, and now it's really getting those treatments to individuals. We are doing a lot with digital and mobile health to try to scale treatments, and we're also working to train providers in evidence-based treatments for eating disorders. And we have various online trainings that are available through the Missouri Eating Disorders Council. I'm actually co-chair of that council, and it's been very exciting to be involved. I've been involved since 2012 when it was initially kicked off, and we have individuals who serve on that council that are educators, parents, people who struggle with eating disorders. Missouri Health Net is on that, the Department of Mental Health, and it's really an exciting committee. We've been able to launch across all the universities in the state of Missouri a prevention and intervention program, and I can give you more information on that at the end of the program, but it's actually a program that we've tested, and we can provide coached intervention for individuals. And most recently with COVID, we've actually been making that service available to all adults in Missouri as well.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And then also we'll ask the same question to you, Denise. Again, what role do you play in helping people manage eating disorders, again, from your perspective as a therapist?
So from my perspective, the way that I'm kind of helping people or involved with folks who are working on their eating disorder is they come into treatment because they recognize that their eating disorder is not something that is helping their life go the way they want it to. And so as a therapist, I'm meeting with them for about 3 therapy sessions a week, and we're kind of just going through it together, going through the treatment process together. So, setting goals in terms of what is their recovery goal for themselves, or what are their goals for themselves, what are, really being with them as they go through the process of refeeding or just getting, back on a nutrition schedule or regular eating schedule. And providing like in the moment support for everything that kind of comes with treatment. So that's my main role is to be a support really for people who are in treatment.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Now what I'd like to do is move on to our next question, and there it is. And Anna, we'll actually let you start off with this because I know you don't work directly, but indirectly you certainly work with people. And I was wondering, in what ways have you seen an impact from COVID-19 with the people, or in your case, the students that you work with?
Thanks, Guy. And it is a really good question. It's a tough question as an educator to kind of look at, but I think for me, I think going through it, being in recovery from this, you recognize signs and symptoms more than someone that doesn't necessarily, or someone that works in the field will recognize signs and symptoms more than someone that doesn't, right? So, and my goal is just to, I haven't had any things happen with any of my students, thank God. However, I do just watch out for them. I really do stress the importance of what it looks like to have a healthy relationship with themselves, and especially a healthy relationship with food. And I talk about healthy nutrition all the time and understanding how that fuels our body in order for us to be able to be healthy. And, it's a really big thing that they try to focus on. But as far as COVID goes, I think the isolation, the quarantine, when kids have to be away from each other, they're at a very social time in their life right now. And I think that those type of circumstances could more impact them to trigger things such as anxiety, depression, disordered eating, to come into an eating disorder. But so those are things that I know that I really do look for and talk to them about.
All right. Thank you, Anna. And with that same question, we'll go right back to Veronica. Veronica, in what ways have you seen an impact from COVID-19?
I think for me, from like a mental health perspective, it seems like COVID-19 has kind of made everyone just a little bit worse in a sense. Like whatever they're struggling with before has been exacerbated, just because we know that connection is important, and that's one of the things that COVID is obviously impacted. So I've seen in terms of specific to eating disorders, people have struggled a lot with the isolation piece, the piece where they're working from home, doing school virtually, just not having the same amount of structure and the same amount of socialization. That seems to have really impacted folks.
Absolutely. I like how you talked about that isolation piece, and we know that. And we've actually had some other guests speak to that actual topic. That's kind of really amazing how that isolation piece plays out, especially even if you're away from school, even for 14 days during quarantine.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm glad you talked on that piece. And then last but not least, Denise, from your perspective, in what ways have you seen an impact from COVID-19?
Yeah, I definitely concur with what's been said. And one of the treatments that we know is very effective for eating disorders is interpersonal psychotherapy. And we really work to improve social ties and social connectiveness. And so I think that social isolation is really problematic. And the other big thing we see, it's the routines, that everything's been shifted, even having 3 meals and 2 snacks per day, having that routine thrown off, having more screen time where there's more images to infiltrate your home around what you should look like, in quotes, of course. And so that can be very problematic. We actually studied looking at students that we surveyed prior to COVID, and then students that we surveyed, a new group after COVID, and we did find an increased rates of binge eating and overvaluation of shape and weight. So clearly it's the anxiety, the problems with turmoil, anxiety over whether they're going to get ill or whether they've lost others. So a whole host of factors that contribute to making this a really much more difficult time.
Absolutely. What's that?
Can I speak to that personally for a second? Would that
Sure.
be possible? Just from that last statement that you said about being triggered with the binge eating and how you've seen an increase with that, and those because of the isolation, because of staying at home and disconnected with the social, from being social. And I can tell you that I've definitely been triggered from those things. Have definitely been the things that have been triggered for me personally from COVID. So, and that's, I think that's really why I'm so excited to have this opportunity to have this discussion, because I know that if it's been happening to me, and I have many years since been in treatment, I can only imagine how much it's happening to people that are still in treatment or that are freshly out of treatment. So thank you for sharing that exact thing. And sorry, Guy.
Look, no need to apologize. We love the insights right here. I mean, this is Mo Health Media. Come on. We want that kind of feedback because we know it's very challenging. I mean, let's just face facts. I had a guest on about a month ago. She's a neuropsychologist, and she told us interesting stat, in fact, about, people from the ages of 18 to basically 30, is that pre-COVID to now in COVID, when they've done that pre-post test, is that anxiety has quadrupled since then. So this plays right into that, is definitely, certainly, Denise, with what you've been talking about, and as well as you, Veronica. So with that, this is a pretty big question I want to ask, and certainly let's take some time to unpack it. And we'll go, Denise, we'll go straight to you on this one. And here's the question. What advice would you have for people who are struggling or working with those who may be struggling right now? What would you say to them?
Well, the biggest thing is really normalizing it, that all of us are struggling. I mean, that's, never happened in 100 years, and we don't really have those coping resources built up. So realizing you're not alone, and that, your coping strategy may be getting more preoccupied with your shape and your weight, or you may have dysregulated eating, but that it's okay. And there is help out there for you. And I guess one of the things I would encourage is the National Eating Disorder Association this week has their Awareness Week, and there's a screen online that you can take that will give you personalized feedback. And if you are struggling, they'll let you know if it seems like you have an eating disorder, and that can connect you to services through the Missouri Eating Disorder Council, through the funding really of the state. We also have a program, it's called Body You, and you can find that at bodyu.program. And I'm sorry, it's at bodyu.program, but it'll be on the website. And I think it offers a lot of information about eating disorders and some coaching, and also helps with anxiety and depression. And then lastly, I would actually talk with your primary care provider as well. Oftentimes primary care doctors don't know that the individual that they're treating, whether it's a child or an adolescent or an adult, are struggling with an eating disorder, and they can best support you, and then getting you linked in with services. But the most important thing of all is to be kind to yourself and realize that you're not alone, and there is help out there, and eating disorders are absolutely treatable.
Absolutely. So with that, let's pivot, if we would, to Veronica. Again, having that therapist point of view, what advice would you have for those people who are struggling with this disorder?
Sure. So I agree with everything that Denise shared. I think it's really important to normalize that we're all struggling in our own ways, certainly right now. My advice would be to get help and to not wait, and to just do it as soon as you can in the best way that you can, because even though the world looks a little different right now, life is worth living, and we want as many people to be part of that as possible. And I can't stress enough how treatable eating disorders are. So there's no reason to have to exist with it, and to have it, hamper your life. So my advice for people who are struggling is to get help just as soon as you can. And my advice for people who are caring for those that are struggling is to take care of yourself. You're of no use to anyone if you're not cared for. So you have to balance caring for others with caring for yourself, and that ultimately allows you to help more people. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Absolutely. With that, Anna, anything you want to add on the self-care part of this? Because you've been quite an advocate for this particular topic for about 3 months now.
I have, and thank you, Guy, for asking. I have, with my students, I have a big 4 that I want them to practice every day, and it's also with myself. But exercise daily, eat healthy foods, get adequate sleep, and self-care. And all those 3 things are great examples of self-care. But there's other ways for us to provide self-care. But it's something that's really important, because if we don't take care of ourselves, how are we going to help each other? If we don't take that time to provide self-care for ourselves, how are you then going to show up as our best version of ourselves for everybody else? And it's okay to take that time for ourselves in order to do what we need to do to be healthy and to stay healthy, whether it's mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I think as far as the self-care goes, and one of the things that I would have as advice is we have to find ways. What are those ways that help us feel healthy? What are the ways that make us feel good about who we are and feel good in our own skin? And I think that's one of the challenges with COVID, is that you've had to change all of your habits. You had to change the ways that our strategies for that we deal with things, whether it be going to the gym or going to day-to-day things. We had to change everything, and creating those new habits can be really, really hard sometimes. So the self-care piece is, I preach it to my students all the time, and I need to take it for the advice for myself. Sorry, I mumbled over my words there, but it's so important. The action mass theory is very necessary.
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And I just been a big fan of all the advocacy that you and some other folks around the country are doing on self-care, because it's very important as a strategy. So thank you, Anna. So our next question is, this one's kind of fun in a sense. We all know that since COVID, we've had a pivot, right? Our positions, our jobs, our responsibilities. And I'm just curious, how has your role changed, either positively or negatively, in response to how we had to adopt our roles? So with that, Denise, how have your roles changed?
You're muted.
So sorry about that. Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. We do a lot of therapy-based work in primary care clinics, and what we've had to do is to move to telehealth quite vigorously, and doing family-based treatment through telehealth. And one of the delightful things about having to do this is that actually our families really like it, and it's provided increased support. And we're doing work in rural areas and in the city. And I think in some of the rural areas, it's been particularly helpful. Many of our trainings that we love to do face to face, we've had to do for providers. We've had to do those virtually. The hard thing has been a lot of the professional meetings have been through Zoom. But on the other hand, I'm super grateful that this is a period in our lives where we do have such opportunities to use digital platforms.
I love that answer. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I just love the fact that we're being more resourceful than ever before. I know it's often been said, sometimes there is some silver lining in the pandemic. And when you hear, Denise, what the things that have changed your role and certainly the organization you work with, there's some very positive changes that for our livelihoods moving forward, this will have a big impact moving forward. So thank you for sharing that. And Veronica, we're going to go to you now. And how has your role changed ever since COVID hit?
Sure. So I guess similar to what Denise shared, is some of the things that I was doing previously are now happening in an online format. So, I'm not doing as many outreach things because those meetings are obviously all happening online now or not happening at all. Conferences have all moved completely online, and that was part of what I was doing before, was kind of taking speaking engagements at conferences and such. And then more specifically, as a therapist, I would say that there's a lot more support that's needed for the families of patients who are coming into our care, just because I think they're more stressed out because we're all more stressed out, right? But they're also concerned because, because of COVID-19, we don't have the same visiting hours that we had before. We don't have the same opportunities for patients to see and be with their loved ones while they're in treatment. And so there's a lot of stress around that for families of not getting to see their loved one as often as they would like to, or as often as they would have been able to in a previous time. So I think it's shifted to providing a lot more support to families, spouses, loved ones, people kind of in the patient's life.
All I can say is having some friends that have passed away from COVID, you really hit a very, very, a nerve, if you would. That has truly been something that has been very difficult. I've had some colleagues of mine at the university that I work at, and hearing that's echoing, Veronica, exactly what you just said. So I really appreciate, again, you sharing that, because that has also made all this so difficult, especially when people want to be with their loved ones. Mm-hmm. And obviously they cannot be. So with that, I want to go on to our next question. And this one is, I'll tell you what, I'm a person who believes in looking for the pivot, or as I like to say in the world of media, what's the next zag move that can be made? So I know I had to go there. People who follow me know that I love this whole concept of zagging. So my question is, as our world continues to evolve in living in this COVID world, and Veronica, we'll start with you.
Okay.
What new challenges or opportunities are there moving forward?
I think that's such a good question. It's complicated. So for me, I feel like one of the challenges, one of the things that we're going to have to work out is socialization again. We're going to have to bounce back from this isolation and anxiety. Like, I know me personally, if I see a huge crowd of people, I'm immediately anxious, right? Because from a COVID perspective, that's not really something we're supposed to be, taking part in. But eventually that will be safe again. And I think we're going to have to kind of figure out what the rebound looks like, particularly with food, because food is such a social thing. It's such a social part of our culture. And so what is it going to look like to come together and to eat again? And how are people with eating disorders going to navigate that, having been through this pandemic where especially eating is something that's done in isolation because you can't do it with a mask on, right? So for me, the challenges ahead are about socialization and food, and reestablishing norms or going back to our old norms, or something in there is how are we going to come back to each other around food, and how are people with eating disorders going to have that? How is that going to go for them?
Really good point. Obviously, what's that new normal going to look like? We don't know, but we know that some people on this panel are certainly going to be right there at the forefront helping lead some of that. And Denise, I want to ask you the same question. What challenges or opportunities do you see moving forward as we continue to live in what we know as the COVID pandemic?
I definitely concur with the issue of this sort of re-socialization to socializing will be very important. My 20-year-old son just feels like complete deprivation to him. And I understand, that it really is, especially, to be restricted like this at a young age for college students. All of us. But one thing I will say that I think is a silver lining is that there's been much more use of parks and getting outdoors, because that has been the one place that people have felt safe. And I think that in Missouri, parks have been more used than they have in years. And so I hope that we can continue, because we know that green space in and of itself improves mood and is really good at reducing stress. So I think that's super important. So I hope we can continue with that. And then the other thing that I think is a positive is that we know that there are really health disparities, and there's whole groups of people who are not getting the care that they need. And I think by telehealth being available, it helps us bridge the gaps. I know a lot of our services for families in poverty, they have to occur in the nights, on the weekends. And it's hard to come up with staffing models where you're sending a staff member, all over, like the St. Louis region. But to be able to reach out to families all over the community has been really terrific. And I'm hoping, we can overcome those barriers. And I think there's a lot that needs to be done to provide better access to food. We know food insecurity. We haven't really talked about that here, but that's another big driver of eating disorders. And during this time, it's really been amplified and is related. So I think the other piece we need to work on is how do we make sure that individuals who need access to food, that it's available, that it's consistently available, and that it's of high quality nutrition as well.
Denise, thank you for sharing that. You're actually, for our viewers, you're actually going to see a segment actually in a few weeks coming out basically on school nutrition as we unpack yet another basically a panel discussion on that topic. So Denise, I'm really glad that you shared that, because you're exactly right. It's got to be of that quality and making sure that we have it accessible, but being safe, right, in how it's packaged. I've learned a lot about packaging, again, from working with the folks on the front lines on that part of it. So thank you for sharing that. And Anna, obviously, from your perspective as being an educator, what challenges or opportunities do you see moving forward?
Thanks, Guy. And I just have to say thank you to the both of you again for those answers, because they were absolutely spot on and they were fantastic. So thank you for bringing so much of that to the table with those questions. For me, I think that something I've been excited about to be sharing with my students as far as moving forward is really how we've been emphasizing the importance of social emotional learning in the classroom. And the amazing thing with health and physical education is that we are at the hub of social emotional learning. Our curriculum and our profession has always been rock solid, rooted in that. And in the development of the whole child, we are the only profession that looks at every single day, develops the whole child. Sorry. And so I love the opportunity to be able to explore that more and to emphasize the importance of highlighting the fact that we do every single day help develop the whole child and what that looks like. And we address the needs of our kids and with SEL. And, you know, we have a really amazing program that was released a few years ago from Shape America called Health Moves Minds. And the basis of Health Moves Minds is a service learning program, but it also helps kids navigate the day-to-day life, and it gives them the tools that they need to have a language in order to identify how they're feeling, and then also use that to see what they can do and to becoming healthier and with their mental well-being and just overall with their life. And I love this program so much. It's an amazing opportunity that kids get to be kind, they get to spread kindness, they get to learn how to provide that self-care. They get to learn how to express their emotions. And right now with COVID, it's so important that they learn how to express those emotions. I mean, we have emoji charts that go from K through 12, and it's so powerful because it allows kids to, without judgment, whether you're virtual learning or in person, without judgment, they feel like they can express what they're feeling. And, you know, that is so important right now. And those words are from them. It's not from me. That's what they said. And learning how to ways to have self-care for themselves, they are learning that we're showing them and giving them those as well. So it's just, that is what I'm excited about as far as opportunities to really continue to dive in on that. And so I can continue to help these kids. And through that, they get to learn how to be proud of who they are, how to like themselves in their own skin, how to be kind to each other, and understand that whatever challenges they are going through, that they're in this, that we're all in this together, and that they have a support system and that they can, you know, achieve any goal they want to achieve. So.
Absolutely. And I tell you what, we're going to stay right there with you, because this is our director of Missouri Healthy Schools, Laura Beckman. This is her favorite segment. She loves to hear about the resources. And so with that, Anna, why don't we start with you as I change the screen? So why don't you tell our audience, could you give them maybe one or two resources that you could direct them to? And also for your convenience, again, if you're watching this, catching the broadcast from Twitter or even from YouTube, we're going to put those links in the description for your convenience. So Anna, you got one or two of them you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys. So I think as far as Health Moves Minds goes, you can go to healthmovesminds.org. It is a link connected to Shape America, our national organization for health and physical education. And they have tons of free resources that you can utilize there. You can also go to shapeamerica.org, and they also have tons of resources that address physical literacy, health literacy, and a multitude of other things, of COVID-ready resources for people that students can use, that teachers can use, and that families can use. And that's what I love. They did so much research and work to help provide these resources. And then also, I'll say one more, because through Missouri Healthy Schools, we also have a ton of resources for activities and for students and families to be able to utilize at home, so that they can create that social connectedness in a positive way and focus on the family.
All right, that's awesome. I'm familiar with all three, as you know, but no, we'll definitely have those certainly in the description. Veronica, let's turn to you. Do you have one or two, if you would, your go-to resources for our audience?
Sure. So one that I recommend all the time is the crisis text line. The number is 741-741, and you can just text any word to that number and be connected to a counselor. So if you are in crisis or just need someone to talk to, need a counselor to talk to, that's a great resource. It's free, it's confidential. That's one of my go-tos, and one of my favorite ones to give folks.
Thank you for sharing that, Veronica. And last but not least, Denise, I'm sure you have a few, so why don't you go ahead and give us some of your
thank you so much for those resources you gave. And then a couple others I'd like to provide. One is for the Missouri Eating Disorders Council. It's MOEDC for Eating Disorder Council.org. And there's an online training section for any providers or professionals or for individuals struggling with eating disorders. If you are struggling with an eating disorder and you are an adult, it's bodyu.org. and that's just bodyu.org. And that program is for eating disorders and also depression and anxiety. And that's it.
Well, thank you so much. I hope all of you had fun today on our panel discussion on eating disorders. I'll tell you this, each and every time I'm blessed with the opportunity to do a broadcast like this, I'm constantly learning new things. Love the energy, and certainly love all the resources and insights that each of you shared. So with that, for Anna Forcelledo, for Veronica Delgado, for Denise Wilfley, I am Guy Danhoff. We want to thank you for watching this special edition broadcast on eating disorders right here on Mo Health Media. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.